what are these recommendations that the committee has made for campuses coming up this fall?
So our government's goal is to keep students safe on campus, and that's been my goal since I received the ministry earlier this spring, whether it be from racism or sexual violence, gender-based violence, or from overdoses. And so our goal is to keep students safe. After the tragic death of Sydney McIntyre Sturco and her family's very passionate pleas with the province to make sure that we are keeping students safe, I immediately called all the presidents of the post-secondaries together and formed a steering committee to help implement province-wide guidelines around overdoses on campus.
And what are some of the ways that these guidelines will be implemented to help the students?
So we have the steering committee is recommending a number of guidelines. The ones that came out yesterday are some of the quick, immediately implementable guidelines. That's things like ensuring that naloxone is available on campus, ensuring that there are alerts shared with students and faculty and staff on campus if there are overdoses and a toxic drug supply on campus. These kind of quick actions that can immediately be implemented. The steering committee is also developing medium and long-term guidelines, which will be in place for the fall in anticipation of return to school in September.
And going forward, will this be, I suppose, revisited and more guidelines perhaps put in place or more supports put in place if needed in the future?
Well, the guidelines, our goal is to have the guidelines in place for the fall, in anticipation of the return of school in spring. And so while a number of guidelines may take longer to implement, one of the recommendations from Sydney's family had been that, for example, every building on campus has a unique address, so the building is easier to find. So we can put that guideline in place in time for fall, but the implementation may take a little longer, obviously, as we look at each unique building on each campus all across the province. So we have the goal of putting all the guidelines in place for the fall to be implemented.
And is this enough to keep students safe when they return back to universities and college campuses?
Absolutely. We are all working together to make that happen. The entire sector is incredibly engaged right now. We have all 25 post-secondaries engaged, the Public Health Office, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, everybody, our government, we are all working in partnership to ensure that we're doing everything we can to put in place guidelines that will keep students safe come the fall. Now, there were policies and guidelines in place, but as we saw, they weren't enough. And so we have an entire sector engaged to make sure that we're putting in the tools that students and faculty and staff need to keep students safe and their staff safe coming this fall.